Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Depths, back with another Kamihime project video. Now this one is a repeat event, but there's quite a lot of changes in this one, so it definitely warrants another video. This is the Python Advent event, and it is darkness based, so light's going to have the advantage, and I'm definitely glad about that looking at the heroic, but anyways, you can use any element you want towards the normal fights, like Ragnarok plus and lower, but again, light has the advantage. It'll be better to use that. There is a huge catch on fighting each version of this boss, so be warned about that. And then on top of that too, when it comes to heroic, it's still got that off element mechanic where you can't debuff if you're not using light, and where your damage is going to be reduced if you're not using light. So if you are capturing heroic, go after it with a light team, especially considering the fact that there is some major stuff, especially with the first stage, where you can actually die. But anyways, let's get into the event itself. So considering that as an advent battle, you are going to want to be strong enough to do all these stages on your own. Weekly advent is a good testing ground for some of the lower difficulties, but it won't give you a good test against Ragnarok Plus, so keep that in mind. And heroic, they do recommend 75,000 power, but it's more to it than that. You're also going to need certain characters along with a strong enough weapon grid. In fact, there is a HP threshold this time around, because before you may or may not have been able to do it with certain amounts of HP, you are forced to have 5-digit HP in this one, and I'll get to that later. There's also been some changes on what you can get for the shop as well. They are recommending that you keep some items if you want to final limit break the Python staff. So those of you that have kept it, good news, you can final limit break that. Those of you that didn't, well, you can get another one here. It's not bad as a weapon, to be quite honest, but there are stronger ones you'll get later on, so it's not too much of an issue if you miss out on this. Plus, there's another weapon on the way that will basically act the same as this weapon, just I think in a different weapon type. So it's still priority to get the SSR weapon that can final limit break. However, if you don't happen to keep it, it's still salvageable. Also, the Adon has had a change as well, and I'll go over that when it happens. But regardless, the Adon was still worth it. So if you don't have her, you're going to end up wanting to keep her just in sub slots maybe, or you might even get some use out of her in some fights. It depends on how strong you are and what access you have to certain Adons. And then on top of that too, we have the special, like the SSR fragment tickets. Goes without saying to get these if you can, because this is basically the free players method of getting guaranteed SSR pools. And even if you're not a free player, it's still more pools. But it does take quite a few events to rack these up, so the more you ignore these, the longer it's going to take for that guaranteed SSR pool. So my suggestion is that you grind after them, but if you do spend on the game, you may be able to ignore it. It's all up to you, but it should be a high priority item should you try to chase it. There's also normal gacha tickets. There's also Draconic Eye Shards, the green orbs, or they call them gemicores. I forgot the name for it, but they're pretty valuable as well. And it's been found out that if you grind out the items for this, it will basically save you a lot of trouble trying to get these later on. So now is definitely the time to try and get these green orbs. They become very high priority. if I remember correctly, you do not need them in order to get the Dragonic Eye Shards now, so definitely go after the green cores. They're going to be much, much more worth it. Now, anything else that might be needed, I personally need these silver books, so this couldn't have come at a better time. I am just short of getting Parcellus, or it's hard to pronounce her name, but the S-class soul that got normal attacks. I need the silver books because I've been using a lot of books to upgrade my Kamihime. This couldn't have come at a better time. It's going to give me more progress to getting her, maybe even let me unlock her anyways. So the silver and the gold books, get them as you need them. Personally, I say just clear them out period point blank, because if you're like me upgrading all the Kamihime you basically get, then you're going to burn out of books pretty quickly. Take that from personal experience. Also, the SSR weapon that can't final break is also here in this medium priority list, as they say, but I would say ignore it unless you really, really want the fodder, because you will have a very good access to final limit break weapons pretty soon. So no, not much point in chasing the weapon. Not much point in chasing the weapon unless you really, really need it. Magic jewels honestly should be higher priority than this, but they're on this part as well. Soul points if you need them. Everything else is more or less optional. So you're mainly just going after the gacha tickets, the SSR Idolin, the final limit break weapon, and the orbs and the Dragonic Eye Shards, because those are pretty good. The green orbs. After that, I would pretty much just go for the magic jewels and any books you may or may not need. So now they say clear as day, if the enemy's too strong, well, you're just gonna have to grind it out. Just grind out and get more stuff. Don't listen to what it says right here, because it says SR class weapons, because that's only filler if you have nothing else to go after right now. We have epic quests, and pretty soon we're going to also have, well, there's weekly advent too, if you can do it. And I do believe weekly advent is under dark right now, so if you're quick enough, you can get another dark weapon beforehand if you're using that element. But the thing is, you're going to want SSR weapons at this point for your weapon grid, because we're going to have, and I do believe it's at the end of the month or the start of next month, we're going to have SSR weapons dropping from ultimate raids, and they will be able to final limit break. They will also cover some pretty basic weapon skills as well that will be quite worthwhile. So you're going to want to get those as soon as possible, and you'll be able to just infinitely grind them as long as you can enter ultimate raids. So the way I see it, SSR weapons are the way to go, and the age of SR is pretty much dead, even if it has two effects. So SSR is the way to go if you need to get stronger. At least in terms of weapons. When it comes to Kamihime, you have what you have. You can't really change that too much without pulling more. And also, there are requirements in order to hop into different things. You do need to be rank 50 in order to enter Ragnarok, and you do need to be rank 71 to enter Ragnarok Plus. Heroic wants you to be rank 100 or higher, and there's a very good reason for that too. We're starting to get some reasonably tricky heroic fights, so definitely want rank 100, because you're going to want an S-class soul. You're going to start wanting S-class souls for heroic. Now, as for the fights themselves, there is one major thing you're going to see on all the different versions of these fights, including heroic. You're going to have to deal with the boss putting debuff immunity to itself, where it will block a debuff. It puts only 2 on itself on the weakest difficulty, but then it will start putting 3 on itself, and then it will eventually start putting 5 on itself in Ragnarok Plus, and it will just spam it in heroic. So removing this is key. You cannot let this sit. If it has 3 of it on them, if it has 3 of it on itself, starting as low as expert, it will put ruin on your Kamihime. Ruin is basically instant death if it stays on you. So be very, very careful of that. And even if you get past that, it's still going to put other stuff on you as well, like blind or poison. So be very careful. But starting at the point where you're probably going to want to grind at, which is ultimate, 1.1 million HP on the boss. Normal burst, it's going to reduce your burst gauge by 30%, or by 30 basically. I don't know if that 30% is going to apply to the characters like Yori or any others that can actually get 200 burst gauge, because if that's the case, they'll lose 60 instead of 30. But it's going to reduce your burst gauge and it's going to deal damage. So that's a big thing about this. And I think it puts curse or blind on you on the raging version, but I can't really tell. It's hard to tell sometimes with Google Translate, but it does indeed put blind on you through its triggers. That's a guarantee. Because first thing it does out the gate is putting 3. It puts 3 blocks on itself. Like 3 debuff blocks on itself. And then, depending on how many is left, if its orbs get full, it will do this instead. If all 3 of them are left, you will see allies get hit, like your characters get hit with ruin. And it also says it will hit you 4 times. So it will definitely try to hurt you. And on top of that, it will also try to put something that can instant kill you. You have 3 turns to get rid of that ruin. Now, in the case of if it has 2 of those debuff blocks on itself, it's going to do blind instead. And it says 3 times. The blind will last for 4 turns as well. So if this is getting read correctly, it's going to be doing random hits. At least for the first 2. Now, this last trigger, if it has 1 on itself and its orbs are max, then it's going to do poison on everybody, and that's going to last 3 turns. I don't know how strong the poison is, but it's still a problem because it's going to be draining your HP on top of whatever damage the boss is doing. So you yourself is going to want debuff protection, or at least a means to remove them off your characters. On top of that, absolutely try to get rid of that stuff on the boss, because the more debuffs it can block, the more dangerous it is. And it's taken quite literally in this fight. Now then, take everything I said about all that, toss it over to Ragnarok as well, and it also has almost 3 million HP. It's at 2.9 million. Now then, Ragnarok Plus is where things get a little bit different, and that's where I'll start reading off other enemies as well. The first enemy, if it gets its burst off, it's going to put sleep on one person for 4 turns. Sleep acts like 2 things. First off, it will act like a paralysis, where you cannot move, and it will act like a defense drop. Now, if you get hit, there's a chance you'll wake up. However, don't take that risk. You do want protection against it. And it is going to deal damage to everyone if someone has sleep. Another reason why you want to remove it. So, definitely do not try to get hit with sleep. It has 2 orbs and it's going to have 3 million HP. It has as much HP as a Ragnarok boss. More of it, if you want to be honest. But stage 2, 2 million HP to deal with, 3 orbs. It's going to stack attack and defense down. And if it's at half HP or less and its charge turn is max, it's going to do it again. But this time with damage. end this fight as quickly as possible. Stage 3, 2.8 million HP on this enemy, 1 orb, so this is going to be pretty dangerous. It's going to do darkness damage on everybody and put its own attack up for 4 turns, should its orbs get full. And if it has that attack buff and its orbs are full, it's going to deal an even stronger AoE. So, it's another case of end this fight quickly. You're starting to see a trend here. And then, the boss itself, remember all that stuff I said from before? Well, now it has 5 debuffs debuff block it puts on itself. And if it has 3 or more, the ruin comes into play. If it has just 1, it's going to do the blind and poison. So, no, if it has 2, it's going to do the blind, and if it has 1, it's going to do the poison. But if it still has that 3, you're going to see ruin. And the ruin counter is even shorter this time. You don't get 3 turns to remove it, you get 2. So, it's even more dangerous. It has 2 orbs, and it has 12 million HP. And if I'm correct, I do believe it's shorter. No, the orb count's the same from Ultimate onwards, it's still 2. But, again, that debuff immunity is an issue. You have to remove it as quickly as possible. And I have no idea if, like, I've read somewhere ahead already before doing this video, but I have no idea if this is the point where you cannot remove it with buff removal. You would have to literally apply debuffs. So, that's something to pay attention to. I know you can't do it in Heroic. Speaking of which, Heroic is a bit of a race, and if you take too long, you are going to die. So, that is the first thing about this first fight. Secondly, the boss itself, you need to remove the debuff block it has on itself, because if it does not have it, it's going to put it on itself. And the next turn, if it has it, you're going to get nuked hard. So, you want to have it, you want to just pretty much just have it on you. Like, all times have something on you where you can put debuffs on this boss. So, there's a pretty interesting strategy for one of the souls. We'll go into that in a second. But, first fight, 40 million HP. There's a reason why there's 6 orbs on this boss. And you can indeed extend it and even do orb removal. Do what it takes to win on this one, because here's the thing. If you burst with any Kamihime, like if you burst with 2 or more of your characters, it will hit you. And it's going to be a strong nuke to one character, but also max its orb count. This is dangerous, and you'll see why when I get to the enemy burst. Also, when its HP is below half, and it's not full orb count, it's going to remove every buff and debuff on the field. It doesn't matter if it's on you or if it's on itself. It's going to remove every buff and debuff on the field. Now, reason why the max orb count is dangerous. If you do not have 10,000 HP or more, you're instantly going to die from the first one, because it will deal 10,000 AoE fixed damage, and then it will also increase its next burst. Now, this is where the problem lies. If you do not kill it by the next burst, it is going to do 100,000 AoE damage to everybody, and it's going to make sure you die, because it's going to remove all your buffs, including damage cut. You will not be protecting yourself against it, so it is definitely a race against the clock. It's 40 million HP. Quite frankly, it's not that much, but it is dangerous, and get used to seeing that counter, because that counter is going to become pretty common. This is the point where heroics are really trying to kill you if you screw up. So, if you screw up, you will see your buffs removed and your team wiped out. period, unless you have an absurd amount of HP. And it is not easy to get 100,000 HP. It really isn't. In fact, I think it's next to impossible unless you have wailed for Defender out the, like, just out of nowhere. But this is where you're going to die if you screw up, so be very careful with that. We've already seen some of it with the last heroic, but now they're really not playing around because there is no cheesiness. You just die. So do not take too long on this first fight. The second fight has got a lot of different mechanics too. Now, Burst Gauge is still getting attacked. There's just two things now with the enemy's burst. When it has full orbs and it's doing these conditions, doing the normal burst, it's going to deal AoE damage and remove 50 burst gauge off your own characters. Raging, it's got a chance to do that, but also put damage against one character. So either way, you're going to be seeing your burst gauge getting reduced quite a lot. Now, it only has 4 orbs, so it's probably not going to use this pretty often, but pay attention to that. Especially since it has 90 million HP, that's more than double the first fight. Now, here's the tricky part of this fight. If it does not have debuff protection, as in it'll prevent itself from taking it'll prevent itself from taking a debuff. If it does not have that, it's going to apply it on itself. So it's going to deal dark damage, and it's going to apply that buff protection to itself. Now, if it does have it, it's going to randomly do 2 very strong nukes. So 2 random hits of a very strong nuke. And this is assuming that it has, if it does not have full orbs. So that's the main gimmick of the fight. Always removing that from the boss. Now, 90% HP and 50% HP is going to do this next one, where it will reduce your combo rate. And then 30% HP or less is going to do another debuff prevention. And it's going to be permanent this time. So I do believe that it's going to be the one where you can't erase it. It's also going to remove it's going to remove all buffs and debuffs off of everybody as well at that 30% mark. So that's going to be a little bit tricky. The tricky thing about that is the fact that your buffs are gone and its debuffs are gone. So you're going to have to reapply them. So the main gimmick with the second fight is definitely removing that debuff immunity, because if it has a debuff immunity, it's just going to retaliate very harshly. The first fight, avoid bursting unless you know you're going to kill it. Avoid bursting unless you know you're going to kill it, because it's going to retaliate very harshly if you do. Now then, when it comes to recommended characters, they definitely recommend Mordred. And also, if you have Perseus, Perseus, she's going to be much more useful. And Hercules was even suggested for anything that was like Ragnarok or Ragnarok Plus, so that's something to know. However, when it comes to heroic, things have changed a bit. Perseus is definite. Perseus is very, very helpful against this heroic because of all the debuffs she can win, and she can maintain a lot of uptime between them. So, very, very helpful. can also extend orb counts, can also remove orbs if I remember correctly. So Perseus is going to be very helpful. Another one that can be very helpful is actually Caspar, because of the fact that if you use a specific ability on her and her snatch count is maxed out, you can use it every turn. That happens to be her defensive drop that deals a static 250,000 damage, if I'm correct. If you have max snatch count on the enemy, you'll be able to use it every single turn. The more snatch count, the shorter the cooldown. So Caspar actually has some use on that, especially since you can also bring her to give some pretty strong buffs and even healing if you want to go that route. So Caspar is quite useful. I'm glad I unlocked her in this case. And of course, they always recommend Rom and Asclepius because, you know, healing, reduce damage, stuff like that. However, just pay very close attention with some things too, because remember, if you screw up in that first heroic fight, you are not protecting yourself even with Rom, because your buffs are going to get removed, including the damage cuts. So you have a time limit. In fact, I would essentially say all of the fights are a time limit, because it's only a matter of time before the boss retaliates and you're going to get hit hard. Even on the lower difficulties, because Ruin is no joke. Ruin instantly kills you. It is indeed the most dangerous thing in a lot of harder fights, including Atlas, so this is very good practice for dealing with that. But in Atlas is worse because there's no wait time before it goes off. It will just kill you. So your own debuff protection is going to come in handy pretty nicely. And quite frankly, I don't even know who I really want to use in this fight, because there is a lot of good candidates I can have. But I think I will. Yeah, I think I know who I'm going to use, actually. I know who I'm going to stick to. There's one character I'd love to use, but I would have her in the sub slots if it comes down to it. I need the other four in front lines. But, anyways, recommended characters. Athena can be pretty useful. Bao is limited, but pretty useful, and that's who I'm thinking about using in sub slots instead of main, because I got others that are pretty good for main slot. Kingu is also pretty good as well, mainly because of the same thing as Athena. You can redirect all that stuff to yourself, like all the single target and multi-hits to yourself. They recommend different characters too that aren't the same element, because of the fact that you can still try to bring them with a SSRDS setup, but you're absolutely going to want light characters to fight, so your damage is coming from light characters. They recommend Raiko and of course Azazel, because Azazel Awakening is just stupidly strong. So they're recommended. When it comes to recovery, Dion Set is recommended as well. Honestly, I don't think it matters if you have the Thunder or the Fire one if you're doing that strategy. Just have a healer, period, point blank, that can remove that can give you some very strong recovery, and then on top of that too, she also makes bottles that can heal you as well, so that's something to know. Soul, of course, is just Soul. I don't need to say too much about her. She honestly covers quite a few things for these fights, so she's very helpful. And again, Mikuru, if you have her, she's limited, but oh no, that's the limited version of Soul. But Mikuru is also another healer too. If you have her, she's limited. Poseidon, Light Poseidon, pretty strong cut, very decent healing, and also can put debuffs on enemies. I would suggest her too. She's not listed here. And if you do happen to have her, I would also say that you may get some use out of Paracelsus or something. She's the one that is more focused on normal attacks. She was helpful in the last heroic. She should still be a little bit helpful in this one because of the fact that they really love countering your bursts. So doing a lot more normal attacks can help you out as well. Just make sure that if you are having any HP drain abilities on her, you want to be able to recover off of that. But there is the fact that she can also put Vigor and a Barrier on one of her abilities, so there's that. And then she's got AoE Indomitable that comes with one of her HP drains, so that's something else that can help you out. So there's like 3 S-Class souls that start with P in their name, so Perseus, Paracelsus, the one that's been nicknamed Axolotl, you might be able to get some use out of her, but quite frankly, I feel like there's other souls that are more helpful for this heroic. I mean, you could probably use any of them. I could see a use for any of them. Either to try and shell out a whole bunch of damage or counteract the whole burst thing or something like that. Except for the first fight. Don't try not to burst in the first fight unless you know you're killing the enemy. But quite frankly, I think this is more lax on the souls as long as you can still do enough damage in order to deal with the enemies. So that's the main thing. Now, material exchange has been redone, so the gold item is all you need. If you've done this Advent event the first time around when it didn't have certain things and all that, you should have other items you can trade for. I mean, you could have other trade items that used to be used. They will be converted into the gold one down here. Like these 3 items. The gold one's the only one that's needed now. Even if you find a limit break the weapon as well. So that's going to be your main thing about all of that. And also, again, I recommend you just ignore the SR weapons because you don't really need them. Now then, going into the stuff that you can get. If you feel like you really need more HP, maybe get this gun. It can fit with aura guns later on, but quite frankly, I've got a lot of HP with just aura guns. I don't need this SSR gun, so it is also skippable. That's why I said that if you feel like you really need it, it's basically fodder, especially since it can't final break. This staff should be able to final break, and it is going to give you assault and defender. It should be large assault and small defender when it final breaks. And I'll even do it right here if you're curious, because it doesn't list it on that page for some stupid reason. But well, no, it's vigor. It's actually vigor, not assault. I'm sorry. But it does go from small to large. So if you want some vigor, this can help you out with that one. It's actually pretty good when used with enough assault weapons. So it may be worth keeping that. But we'll get some other stuff that can easily replace it later on. So if you don't want to keep it, that's also up to you. Now, Python herself, she gives barriers. That alone is the reason why she sticks in subslots if you get her. But her basic attack is not all that high. She's more for HP as well. So that's another reason why you probably don't need that gun from this event. But the biggest gimmick with her. Now, this used to be just against light. It used to be like a 10% damage resistance against light. Now it's just a 15% defense increase for all characters, along with her 30% elemental attack increase. That could be quite useful because of the fact that it's like a permanent damage cut. And I think they made it 15% because it acts like a 10% damage resistance towards everything. So that's something to know. Remember, defense and damage cut are 2 different things, but they still stack. Along with barrier too, and she essentially gives you 2 of those 3. So Python can actually be pretty good for subslots, despite the fact that her attack power is very low. She gives you a lot of HP to make up for it. I think it's one of the highest HP increases among the event add-ons. But She's basically the star of this. Now, when it comes to the missions, simply put, clear with certain rarities and you'll clear this. You'll have to clear Ragnarok with R or lower. You'll have to clear Ultimate and Expert with SR or lower Kamihime, so that includes your sub slots. Don't forget that. Clear Ragnarok Plus, period, without using an elixir, and you get stuff for that as well. But anyways, that's all for this. This video is going on long enough because remember, there's quite a few changes I had to go over, and then on top of that, the biggest thing was definitely that heroic fight. Because, like I said, this is the first time we will start seeing stuff like this, where if you screw up, it's going to remove all your buffs to ensure you die. So, don't screw up. That's all I have to say. Do not screw up. And even the lower difficulties can be tricky if you don't know what you're doing. So, again, pay very close attention. This advent does not take any prisoners, if you ask me, because it is, while the HP on these enemies aren't exactly all that high, even on heroic, it's not that high compared to previous heroics, because I know we've dealt with more HP than this. It's still not holding back. It's still going to try to kill you. So be very careful with that. There's more ways to die than simply just not having HP in these cases. So pay very close attention. But anyways, that's all for this. More of this will come soon, and take care.